Hi, welcome back. Okay, both versions of our file have actually rendered now. So let's have a look what we've got. I'm going to use the RAM player utility that comes with Max. You can find it in the rendering menu. Now what the RAM player allows you to do is to actually load up a sequence of files into memory. So you can play them back as an animation, or you can just load up a single frame and have a look at that. Now, it becomes more useful as you have a channel A and a channel B. That means you can load up one image in channel A and another image in channel B, and a little slider will appear here, and you can actually slide back and forth and see what the differences are between the two images, which is pretty useful, to compare two different renders, which is funny enough what we're going to do now. So let's see how that works. Click on the Open folder. You can see I've got the sequence rendered out here, and I've put off in the file name. To indicate this is the version with the light tracer off. So I'm just going to click on the first file name, and I've indicated sequence here, so it'll load in the sequence. And as an example, if it's a very big file, you could turn off preview. In this case, it's actually a reasonable size, so we'll just OK that. You get confirmation image file list here, and this will actually create an image file list from the sequence that we've just defined. So we'll just OK that. And then we've got a RAM player configuration screen, and you can decide how big the image is when it's brought in, so you could resize it. You could actually bring in, let's say, frame 1 to just 100, so you could just bring in half the sequence if you wanted to. And you can also limit the amount of memory that it's allowed to use, so in case you want to keep that memory spare for another application. Okay, so let's just OK that. And it's loading in the file, and here you've got a bar which shows you how much memory your PC has available. And here you can see how many frames it's actually loaded in. And there we are, it's loaded in the entire sequence. At the moment I've got it set up to play back 25 frames a second, but as you can see you can choose other options. So you've got 24 for film, 25 for PAL, 30 for NTSC, or 50 and 60 for other formats. I'm not sure which other formats use those kind of speeds. I think there's is it Optimax? I'm sure there is another film format that actually uses 50 frames a second or 60 frames a second. Anyway, but that's pretty specialist. So for now, let's just put that back to 25 and press play and see what happens. There you go. So our flaming ball swings down and knocks our holy teapot flying. So it's looking pretty cool. Now, if I use the right mouse button and click on the image and push left and right, you can see I can actually scrub backwards and forwards in time. So, pushing left goes backwards and pushing right goes forwards. So you can just rewind the animation back to the beginning, and you can actually look at the point where the flaming ball comes down and strikes the teapot. So in it comes, strikes the teapot bounces off the floor and bounces out of shot. You can see, as the flaming ball swings down, the soft shadows which we put in earlier, they really pay off. They give us a nice soft effect on the plinth. You can see a nice soft shadow from it. I mean, if you want to see what the scene looks like without soft shadows, just load up the example file off the DVD and try changing the shadow types on the both lights in the scene to shadow map, and you'll see you'll get a very hard edge on these shadows, and it doesn't look half as good. But it does actually render much faster. So you can use shadow maps for scenes where hard edge shadows aren't a problem, or for instance where you just want to do a test animation with rendering, and you're not really willing to wait much longer for the render. So you can just put soft shadows on, area lights I should say, which use soft shadows when you get to that point in the pipeline where you're happy with your render and you want to put it out at full effect. Okay, so there we go. That's the render with no GI, and what you should notice here is the underside of the plinth is very dark, and it's always dark. Particles are flying everywhere, but it never really lights up. There's no real bounce light in the scene. So what I'm going to do now is go to channel B, and we'll click on. We'll just go up a level, and we'll go to tutorial 2. And in here, as you can see, I've said on in the file name. That indicates that the light trace is on, so we'll just OK all these. And now it's actually loading in channel B. Okay, let's just leave that load in. And it comes. And when I loaded in channel B, you can see it's got information here about how much memory each channel is using, how many frames and so forth, and the name of the files. And what I also did when I actually loaded in, when I activated channel B, is it's produced a little slider here. And you can see I can slide back and forth between the two images. And what you notice is that if I push this over to the left, what you're actually looking at now is totally image sequence B, which has got the light tracer on. And here you can see the light's coming down from above, it's striking the floor, and it's bouncing back up and it's lighting the underside of the plinth, which is a much nicer lighting effect, much more naturalistic. And if I slide this over here, over to the right, fully over to the right, this is the render without the GI, the light tracer turned on, and you can see you've got no bounce light, as I pointed out earlier. So there you go. There's the difference between the two files. Now, if I scrub a little bit further, we'll just scrub until the flaming ball is here. What you're looking at now is channel A, no GI, and then as I slide across, you can see. Actually, sorry, you've got full GI there, I should say. As you can see, you've got bounce light, and then as I slide across, you can see you've got no GI again. So you get much less, but well, you don't get any bounce light with no GI. So it's generally preferred to use GI when you can for extra quality, although it does take a lot longer to render. So you have to bear that in mind. So if I just press play, you can see it just plays through, and I can actually scrub through while it's playing, and you get a pretty interactive view there of what the two image sequences look like. So it's quite a useful little utility, RAM player. And when I'm happy with that, if let's say I think to myself, oh, that's great, I want to send that to a friend, or I want to send that off to another studio to show them a preview of an animation and get that approved, you can just go to the save channel icon. You got one for A and one for B, and then you can just choose a directory and choose a format. So for instance, you could do QuickTime or as an AVI, and you can just save out that file, and then you can send that file off to somebody else, or keep it for quick playback on the desktop for later, and so forth. And you can pretty much you can do anything else that you would ever do with an AVI or QuickTime file. So there you go. It's a pretty useful little util there, RAM player.